Hi, it's Heidi Sawyer. I had an amazing opportunity to spend some evening sessions with a group of extremely motivated, intuitive, sensitive people. These are people who are driven to understand the deeper meaning and purpose of their life. During these sessions, I took them along a 7-step proven path that I have walked myself and helped many others do the same. That I've done with incredible results. I'm sorry you couldn't be there, but I hope this is the next best thing. These are excerpts from the live events. Here they are. Enjoy, and I hope more importantly that you do something with them for your life moving forward. Thank you for listening. So this is the 5 stages. So I'm just going to literally, go through them really quite quickly because we've got lots of other things to do. But it gives you an insight and an awareness of what you're working with, okay, in order to rebuild your vase, but also choosing your glass. Because the parts that you're replacing with the glass become something that's exciting, because you get to choose what you put in there. Okay? So the first part to mind management is resistance. Okay? Our resistance to something is particularly aggressive when we feel that there is something about to change over which there is no control, where we don't have control over it, something that's about to change. Okay, so that is when our resistance is at its highest state. Okay, now normally people kind of push against or feel embarrassed by their resistance. Okay, it's a way of protecting or circling the vase. Bringing something to our conscious awareness is associated with pain. Okay, so when there's a resistance because we think, well, if I bring this to my conscious awareness, it's somehow going to be painful. So best to avoid it and push it to one side, resist it. So when pain comes up, what do? We go through the circling of the protection of the porcelain vase. So we go into rejecting it. We try and do things that desperately to keep things the same, even if we know it's not good for us. Okay? And it is something that is programmed into our brain as a way of doing things. It's an accurate kind of survival instinct because it used to be relevant. Okay? It used to be relevant when we didn't have everything, our basic needs attended to. Now we have that in society. So guess what's happening now? We're being forced to break through this. Okay, this is why all these things keep coming up into your life or awareness that feel like a huge challenge to overcome. And then it doesn't mean to say that it's something in your external world. It feels like an internal thing that's happening, and it's outside of your control quite often. Okay. Why do we want to keep things safe? Well, they will keep things the same. It's to avoid psychological pain. Okay, because with change, there is an association that there will be some kind of psychological pain. Okay, so the mind management tip on this first one, so number 1, is for you to accept, and for those of you who know me well, that psychological pain is the beginning of transformation. Okay, so rather than see it as a failing, that it's a lament over your smashed vase, it's actually, okay, this is the beginning of a transformation. I may not understand the outcome yet, but it is the beginning of something that's exciting. Okay, now personally I would say that much of my world changed pretty much overnight. The moment that I accepted that passing through psychological pain was something to take as a line of transformation rather than something that symbolized pain. And to be absolutely honest, I would say that I had probably got towards the end of a viewpoint which was, well, I don't think the world can become more painful. So best I accept something that is to do with change. Okay? And that was a long time ago. And I would say it was probably the best decision I ever made. Okay? So, mind management tip number 1 is to accept that psychological pain is the beginning of a transformation. Okay? Rather than the end of your world. Who feels that they're going through something at the moment that's bringing up psychological pain? Okay. Does that help? So number 2 is denial. Okay. Why do we deny something? Well, it's the clinging desperately to what we know. Okay, that's pretty much what denial is. And in order for something to change, we have to first acknowledge it. Okay, we have to acknowledge that that there is something there before it can change. Okay, so to use something as an example, people ask me and they say, "Oh, why haven't I got a relationship in my life? I'm a nice person, blah blah blah." I'm just using that as an example. Well, there will be a component within their mind management that is around denial. Okay, does that make sense? And it will be something that they're clinging desperately to that is an energy of something that they know. So that could be something that's conscious, or it could be something that's unconscious that they need to bring into their conscious awareness. And it may well be that their view of love, or the instruction in their psyche is that love is being alone. So in order to change that, you have to then become aware that you have something imprinted in there that says that love means being alone, so that you are loved because you're alone. Does that make sense? I'm not saying, I'm just using that as an example. So in order for that to change, there has to be an acknowledgement that there is an issue within that, rather than that there's no decent people out there. I hear all the time women say to me, "There's no decent men." And I hear men saying to me, "There's no decent women." I say, "Hello, I think you need to meet." So, mind management tip number 2. Feel the pain for an honest acknowledgement of what has hurt. Okay? So if you want something to change, you need to have an honest acknowledgement of what has hurt. Okay, because sometimes we know what has hurt, but because it hurts, we don't want to feel it. And an honest acknowledgement allows us to move to the next stage. Okay? So number 3, what's number 3? Number 3 is frustration. Okay? So how does frustration come into the mix? Well, frustration happens when we're stuck between what it is that what we know and what it is we wish to understand, but is yet unexplored. Okay, what is yet to be explored. So the frustration surfaces when we're stuck between two places, where there is a feeling of a suspended state. When we're leaving one vibration, for instance, and entering a new one, there's a level of frustration in between. Who feels that they're in frustration at the moment in their life? Okay, so your transition is happening between one vibration and the next, and so it's surfacing the frustration. Okay, frustration is a normal part of that development cycle. Now, what happens is that people associate frustration as a shameful emotion. Okay, so rather than let yourself feel frustrated, you push the emotion to one side. Okay, the way through it is to feel full on that level of frustration. And sometimes that means, kind of throwing your toys out the pram and things. What do children do as part of a development aspect? They throw tantrums. And if you know my two, they can really throw some. And I find it quite amusing because it's a full expression. Now, many of you in this room will perhaps not have been allowed a full expression in your early foundations. That it was contained, it was shut down, it wasn't something that you were allowed, even though it's part of a normal part of your development. So therefore, your internal world associates frustration as something that's shameful, rather than an indication that you're moving from one thing to something else. Okay? So it's been programmed as something that's inappropriate, when frustration is exactly appropriate. Okay? It's something that symbolizes our adjustment from one thing to something else. Okay? And it's a suspended state in between. That's why children go through it. It's part of their development cycle. Okay? So it's something it's a prelude to breakthrough. Okay? But that breakthrough remains bottled inside. And when something builds as being bottled inside, it starts to cause stress. Okay? So, mind management tip number 3 is to accept frustration as a gift to propel breakthrough. Okay? If you are currently experiencing it as something that feels shameful, as in you're not allowed an expression of your frustration, then the way that you access that, in fact, I think we might do that in a moment. Who feels that something is really frustrating? Put your hands up. Come on, put them up so I can actually see them. Okay. Okay, who thinks or suspects that they might see frustration as something that's shameful? Okay, put your hands up so I can see them rather than be going, whoa. Okay. Who thinks that perhaps when you feel frustration, you can feel your internal world sort of pulling back from it? Okay, who feels that? And that you kind of go into your headspace. Okay, so think of something right now that you have felt frustrated by. Whether it's something that's very present or something that really got you goat at some point or another. Yeah? As you allow yourself to feel it, you can feel it in the initial stages, yeah? And then it starts backing off as soon as I say, express it. Okay, can you feel it retreating? That it sort of whips back inside and it whips back into the back of the solar plexus. Okay, does that make sense, yeah? If you then now allow, or you try and, if it's not whipping into the back of the solar plexus, what you're doing is trying to make logic of it. So you're transferring it into the headspace. Going, well, the reason for it is this, blah, blah, blah. And there's someone over here that's really doing that. It's going, no, there is a logical reason for it. So they're sort of trying to remove themselves from it. Okay, I'm not sure who it is. It's someone over here. Right, oh, is it? So as you can feel it pushing back and pulling back, and it's going over here now as well. Someone's got it as a well, actually quite a few of you have got it as a child self. So if you excuse me, imagine it as a child. For those of you who got it, have a feel for how old you think that child is that's pulling back. Most likely, it will probably be about between the ages of about 7 and 10. Okay, who's can feel it pulling back? Yeah? When you started to get mouthy. All children at some stage or another get mouthy. Okay? It's part of the development phase of frustration. Can you feel that? And then if you just allow yourself now to feel the shame energy that's sat there with it. Where does it sit? Smack bang straight in the middle of the heart center. Okay, can you feel that? So often, as an example, the connection or the interest in angel vibrations and things like that comes up when we're moving through this frequency, okay, of accepting that that frustration is normal, that it's not something to be ashamed of, and that you're not pulling back. But you can feel it. There's more than half the room. I can feel it. Your solar plexus has run off. Okay, it's run literally to the back. It's hiding almost in the spine. Some of you start getting backache any minute. Who's got backache in the middle back? Yeah. Oh, so I saw a hot water bottle a second ago. Oh, there we go. All right. So the tip within this is, as you feel that shame and you feel that pulling back, is to go in after it and encourage it forward and say, come on, you don't have to hide. You don't have to fix it, but you don't have to let it hide. You don't have to let it pull back and distance itself from you. That it starts to feel comfortable with coming forward. That it doesn't feel that it's going to be punished for coming forward. Okay? Which will be why you've got some of the components to do with confrontation. Okay, does that make sense? So, rather than it push back, allow it to feel encouraged that it's okay for it to come forward. As soon as it's allowed to come forward, where it's not a shameful energy, you will start to move frustration quickly. Okay? Number 4 is rejection. Okay? So for you, the fear of rejection it's what it really is. It's the fear of humiliation. Okay, rejection to you is humiliation. So absolutely, as part of the mind management journey, is that you will avoid often rejection at all costs. Okay, because it's about facing this ultimate energy that you don't want to face, you don't want to go into, and any possibility of humiliation. Okay? Now, why is this such a strong energy? The reason for it is that guilt and shame, they are normal survival instincts. Okay, it ensures the survival of the tribe. So as an example, prehistoric man, if you didn't have guilt and shame, as a hunter, you wouldn't have brought the food back. Okay? You would have consumed it and thought, oh, well, stuff the rest of you can find it yourself. It's a survival instinct to have the experience of guilt and shame. If you particularly, and some of you will do, come from, and I think I mentioned this in the last session, some of you come from a narcissistic foundation, as in your background has perhaps a parent who has narcissistic traits, which is they put their needs over and above yours. It will mean that you will have an extra helping of guilt and shame, because that was used as a tool to make you compliant. Okay, does that make sense? And sometimes that can pass through generations, that sort of lineage of behaviour, because it's a learned survival instinct in certain setups. For you, as an intuitive sensitive, you haven't accepted that, so you accepted yourself, perhaps, as full of guilt and shame. Okay, so the fear and the control mechanism used was the fear of humiliation. So if you didn't do as you were told, you were humiliated. Okay, who felt that perhaps that was their reality? Yeah, quite a few of you. So this is the reason, people always wonder why someone is passive when they're faced with extreme aggression.
It's because it's a survival instinct to remain passive when you are faced with extreme danger. Okay, you think you might not, but in actual fact, placed in that situation, 9 times out of 10, you would find yourself going into a passive place. Okay, because you don't know when the humiliation is coming. Okay. Now, this again is a survival instinct, so this is why rejection is a big thing to overcome. Is that you, excuse me, have to be sure that if you are in the pack environment and the leader environment, you have to be sure you can overpower the pack leader, okay, before you take them on. Because if you take them on and you don't defeat them, so to speak, you are humiliated and removed from the group. So you're pushed out, okay? Now, many of these instincts are still prolific in how we behave, but they are outdated for modern society. Okay, you see this all the time in work environments, and you've probably been on the receiving end of them at some point or another. Okay, which is that whole pack thing to try and push you out of the group because you've brought something up that others are trying to defend as their porcelain vase. Okay, when you're not trying to be aggro, you're just trying to be helpful for something to change and move forward. Okay, because you can see the benefits of that, and you don't understand why they're behaving in an offensive manner. Okay, does that make sense? So I've put this in here because this is obviously relevant to some of you. So for some of you as the child self, what happens is the child, in terms of confrontation of the pack leader, is obviously the pack leader when you're a child are your parents, as in one or the other parent. So confrontation is then to risk humiliation or long-term rejection, which as a child, that is a big thing to risk because they're your source of food. Okay, does that make sense? So the survival instinct comes up where you're passive and then you absorb the guilt and the shame, which is why it's a big thing for your psyche to overcome. Okay, does that make sense? It doesn't mean that you're incapable. It means that it's a big thing that you're working through. So what happens is the adult self, your adult self still perceives that risk. Okay, it still thinks that it's got that risk, that there is a possibility of starvation if you face something. Okay, if you face the energy of rejection, even though it's part of the mind management journey. Okay, so tip for number 4 is feel the rejection as though it's already happened. Okay, that is one of the quickest routes through something. If you think that you think you want to change something and you think you're going to be rejected, so you don't do it, imagine the rejection and take yourself through the whole emotion of it, because it will break the fear. Okay? And it takes you into that deeper connection and an internal journey towards the self. Okay? Does that make sense? And it will definitely start to open up your intuitive self to new levels. So what we're starting to see, and what we'll start to see in society over the next few years, more and more exposure. Okay, so more things are going to become exposed. There will be more chance of rejection within things that have been hidden. Okay, does that make sense? It will all start coming up to the surface, where it's not something that people can control. We already know that as an example with the internet. You know, every time someone tries to shut something down, it pops up in a format that you can't control. It's very symbolic of what's happening in terms of the internal process. Okay? So number 5. What's number 5? Trust. Okay, so this is the process of what you're moving through. So trust is number 5. Trust comes when we develop a relationship with our heartfelt values. Okay, these are not somebody else's values, these are our own values. And quite often we don't actually know what our own values are because somebody else's have been entrenched into us. Okay, so as an example, if you think about when this happens to lots of people, if you think about maybe some of the career options that you utilised, were they your options? Or were they, something that was perceived as good for you in the original sense? And just using that as an example. Relationships. Is it something that that is your choice, or is it something that's been part of a history? So that it's been manifest as that's been manifest as a particular history. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah? Where things haven't worked out, was it your choice or was it a historical choice? And why hasn't it worked out? Well, it hasn't worked out perhaps because your internal world is changing, so your standard is higher. Okay, does that make sense? But you're trying to make it fit for a period of time. So trust has a two-brain situation, okay? So how do we have that? We have a head brain and a heart brain. Okay, we all know what the head brain is. It's like the grey thing. And the heart actually has its own brain. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but it has its own level of awareness. Okay, there's more and more evidence to suggest that. So our head brain, how do we work through that? As in, its resistance, etc., and the journey towards trust. We work through that with meditation. Okay. How do we work through the heart brain? We work through the heart brain's issues with feeling. And this is why I see a lot of the time, I see lots of instances where people have worked through the head brain stuff. And they think, well, why is this all occurring? I thought I'd already been through all this. I thought I'd solved all this, blah, 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 blah. Why is all this happening? It's because their heart brain is having its clear out. Okay, so its heart brain is then firing everything up that's still sat in the body, which is why it's so important that your journey is a combination of the head brain and the heart brain. Because when those two are working together, it develops trust. You haven't got any other option. Because what is the head brain and the heart brain communicating? Intuition. What's the head brain operating independently of the heart brain? It becomes a logical process and a slight kind of panic orientation. What is the heart brain without the head brain? Someone who's overrun with feelings and emotions and uses makes an emotional decision rather than a logical decision. Okay, does that make sense? That upon reflection wasn't a good idea. If they combine the two, they have intuition. Okay, so trust is the development of your intuitive self through the heart brain and the head brain working together. Okay. So, as I say, the end result is that they unite, they work in unison. So, mind management tip number 5 is ask your intuition. So when you're asking about something and you're practicing that, this is something that you practice within your everyday world, is ask your intuition to give you a joint head and heart answer. Okay, to something. So you want to know the answer to something, ask it to give it to you in a joint format, not just in the head space. Okay? So if you think about something now that you would like the answer to, okay, so something in your life that you would like the answer to, okay? And maybe something that has caused you a level of frustration, has caused you a level of, you think you may have been in rejection over it, or pushing it, excuse me, pushing it to one side. Think of something that you would like to know the answer to. Okay, so who's got something? Okay, so Susan, what is it?
About moving forward with work, changing work.
Okay, so moving forward with changing work. So who else has got that kind of question? Okay, quite a few of you. Okay, so let's ask Susan what she thinks. So what does your head say?
Head is fearful of the circumstance. The head questions, is it the right time because of the job market, and goes into logical.
Okay, so the head says, is this the right time because of the job market and conditions? Is it suitable for me to make a change? What does the heart say?
It feels it needs to be done for my own good.
Okay, so the head says it's not possible, and the heart says it has to be possible. So there's a conflict. Okay, so if you think about the conflict, where does the conflict sit in the body?
Right in the chest.
Okay, so let yourself feel it. So the conflict sits in the chest. Now let the conflict communicate.
It's the fear.
Okay, so if the conflict is communicating, you would then have the communication between the head and the heart. Okay, but you won't let the communication happen. And the reason why Susan won't let the communication happen is because this feels to me that it's very much to do with conditioning. So it is going into the rejection from the tribe, the pack, which is, it feels to me that it's, if you were to go with making a change, it would be a change that's disapproved of by your family unit. They would try and talk you out of it. And what it feels to me is that your system thinks it's too tired to go through another argument. Another justification for your, this sounds really extreme, but another justification for your existence. Does that make sense? To feel valued in the physical world. What else do I have to go through in order to feel valued in this physical world? That's the frustration. So it's communicating its frustration. Okay? Does that make sense? So if you feel that, and if you feel that as a head and a heart communication, what does it say? Don't worry, everyone else is going through the same feeling in their own body, going, oh, crap.
To me, it feels like it's putting me first.
Okay, and what happens if you put you first?
Well, the rejection kicks in.
Okay, so sit in the rejection. The rejection, your system's rejection says, I'm used to this, I'm used to rejection, I feel rejection every single day. I feel that my whole life is rejected, I feel like a rejection, I really don't feel acceptable. I don't feel acceptable in my whole environment. I never have felt acceptable. I've experienced that in terms of my hurt, but I've kind of put it to one side, and the way I've put it to one side is through rebellion. So I've experienced the fact that I feel hurt, or avoided the fact that I feel hurt through the times that I have rebelled. And in order to feel less of the pain of feeling hurt, I rebel. Okay, does that make sense? So where have you rebelled? Oh, that sounds like someone's... I wasn't sure if that was a water canister. Okay. Okay, so rebelled by keeping busy. Who else has done that? If you're honest. Okay, so let yourself feel that, and behind that, tucked behind that, is the shame. Okay, as you allow yourself to feel this, you can start to feel the head and the heart connecting. Okay, can you feel in your body it started to change? The energy started to change, it's not separated. Okay, let yourself feel it. It's starting to connect, it's starting to filter down from your head space, and it's starting to filter up from your body space. Okay, have you had back things going on? Yeah. Okay, you would do because it's really lodged in your back. Yes, and it's all about approval, and so it keeps switching for me. And how I'm looking at this, it's switching from your father energy. It started off in your father energy, and now it's gone into your mother energy. It's sort of, will I be loved? If I'm myself, will I be loved? I can't be sure of that, so I don't encourage it. And now it's going into it, sort of feeling slightly shaky. Can you feel that in your body? And it's going through to your hands. Do you get numbness in your hands? Yeah. Okay, they really lock up, don't they? Do they go cold?
I can wake up in the middle of the night and my whole hand can be numb.
Okay, so your whole hand will be numb. This is what's going on. And has it been happening more recently?
Not so much this year, last year.
Right, okay, this is what it's trying to say. It's trying to talk to you. It's saying, you know, I need to talk to you. And it's more in your left hand. Okay. So, there's a whole bunch of someone else over here gets it in terms of they go cold. They get cold. Who gets cold? Over here. Right. Okay. Yeah, it's cold. Okay, so if you go back to it now, so if you go to the head space, what does it say?
It can be done.
If you go to the heart space, what does it say?
The opportunity is there.
So now does it feel safe?
Feels safer.
Okay.
In the chest, but it does feel safe.
Okay, so if you then ask it to communicate what it's saying in the chest, what does it say? What is it unsafe about?
The uncertainty, the trusting myself.
Okay, it's to do with communicating your truth. Right, this is something that I'm going to get you all to do before I take you through a process. Right, so what I want you to do is turn around to the person next to you, and no one's going to the loo or anything like that. You sit on it, right? There's no escaping. And there's no, I pretend I'm busy. What you're going to do is say to the person next to you, and if it feels right that it goes into threes, absolutely, great. Or if that, that's how it pans out and how it should be, then that's how it should be. What I want you to do is, and I will tell you when to stop, okay, is you are going to communicate to the person next to you your truth. And not from your head space, not from your heart space, just what feels like it wants to come forth from the combined efforts of the two, which feels more of an intuition. And if you think to yourself, well, I don't know what my truth is, then that's what you communicate. You say, I have no idea what my truth is. But if I was to give it a go, it might be X, Y, Z. Okay, does that make sense? And the reason that you're going to do this is because it's part of the healing for you of the rejection component that's sat in the body, is to communicate what it feels, where it knows it's not going to be attacked. Okay, so it then starts to develop the head brain and the heart brain talking to each other. Okay, so that the intuitive process becomes more automatic. So the person who's sat next to you is, one person's going to go first, and then the other. So you go first. First one's going to go first, and then the other's going to go second. I would kind of tell you when to swap over, but if there's a natural kind of feel that you want to swap before that, that's fine. But I'll tell you when to swap over, just to solve who's going first and who's going second, because that will be, a few seconds row. The one who's really not sure of themselves will volunteer the other person to go first so that they can see whether they're doing it right. Okay, so it'll go back and forth for a second. So I'm going to say that the person on the left is going first. Okay?
For more great free content designed to support your purchase of my book, Highly Intuitive People, 7 Right Brain Traits to Change the Lives of Intuitive Sensitive People, please visit finallyfeelunderstood.com. There you can subscribe and download for free the meditation specific to today's episode. If you have already read the book, then it's time for you to receive exclusive access and support from me and your fellow intuitive sensitives as we go deeper together along this proven 7-step path by joining us in my monthly membership program called Heidi's Circle. There you can ask me anything in a safe and private environment, and I will answer you live. Join us today by visiting healmyinnerworld.com.
Does that help? So number 2 is denial. Okay. Why do we deny something? Well, it's the clinging desperately to what we know. Okay, that's pretty much what denial is. And in order for something to change, we have to first acknowledge it. Okay, we have to acknowledge that that there is something there before it can change. Okay, so to use something as an example, people ask me and they say, "Oh, why haven't I got a relationship in my life? I'm a nice person, blah blah blah." I'm just using that as an example. Well, there will be a component within their mind management that is around denial. Okay, does that make sense? And it will be something that they're clinging desperately to that is an energy of something that they know. So that could be something that's conscious, or it could be something that's unconscious that they need to bring into their conscious awareness. And it may well be that their view of love, or the instruction in their psyche is that love is being alone. So in order to
Hi, it's Heidi Sawyer. I had an amazing opportunity to spend some evening sessions with a group of extremely motivated, intuitive, sensitive people. These are people who are driven to understand the deeper meaning and purpose of their life. During these sessions, I took them along a 7-step proven path that I have walked myself and helped many others do the same. That I've done with incredible results. I'm sorry you couldn't be there, but I hope this is the next best thing. These are excerpts from the live events. Here they are. Enjoy, and I hope more importantly that you do something with them for your life moving forward. Thank you for listening.
So this is the 5 stages. So I'm just going to literally, go through them really quite quickly, because we've got lots of other things to do. But it gives you an insight and an awareness of what you're working with, okay, in order to rebuild your vase, but also choosing your glass. Because the parts that you're replacing with the glass become something that's exciting, because you get to choose what you put in there. Okay? So the first part to mind map over your smashed vase is actually, okay, this is the beginning of a transformation. I may not understand the outcome yet, but it is the beginning of something that's exciting. Okay? Now, personally, I would say that much of my world changed pretty much overnight. the moment that I accepted that passing through psychological pain was something to take as a line of transformation rather than something that symbolized pain. And to be absolutely honest, I would say that I had probably got towards the end of a viewpoint which was, well, I don't think the world can become more painful. So best I accept something that is to do with change. Okay? And that was a long time ago. And I would say it was probably the best decision I ever made. Okay? So, mind management tip number 1 is to accept that psychological pain is the beginning of a transformation. Okay? Rather than the end of your world. Who feels that they're going through something at the moment that's bringing up psychological pain? Okay. Management is resistance. Okay. Our resistance to something is particularly aggressive when we feel that there is something about to change over which there is no control, where we don't have control over it, something that's about to change. Okay, so that is when our resistance is at its highest state. Okay, now normally people kind of push against or feel embarrassed by their resistance. Okay, it's a way of protecting or circling the vase. Bringing something to our conscious awareness is associated with pain. Okay, so when there's a resistance because we think, well, if I bring this to my conscious awareness, it's somehow going to be painful. So best to avoid it and push it to one side, resist it. So when pain comes up, what do? We go through the circling of the protection of the porcelain vase. So we go into rejecting it. We try and do things that desperately to keep things the same, even if we know it's not good for us. Okay? And it is something that is programmed into our brain as a way of doing things. It's an accurate kind of survival instinct because it used to be relevant. Okay? It used to be relevant when we didn't have everything, our basic needs attended to. Now we have that in society. So guess what's happening now? We're being forced to break through this. Okay, this is why all these things keep coming up into your life or awareness that feel like a huge challenge to overcome. And then it doesn't mean to say that it's something in your external world. It feels like an internal thing that's happening, and it's outside of your control quite often. Okay. Why do we want to keep things safe? Well, they'll keep things the same. It's to avoid psychological pain. Okay, because with change, there is an association that there will be some kind of psychological pain. Okay, so the mind management tip on this first one, so number 1, is for you to accept, and for those of you who know me well, that psychological pain is the beginning of transformation. Okay, so rather than see it as a failing, that it's a lament